On this week's episode of Amari Purple Talk, we are gathered here to get through this thing called Entropy. My thoughts on the perfect Sign of the Times Deluxe set, the Purple Spotlight, Bite the Boots, and more. Amari Purple Talk starts now. Welcome to episode 31 of Amari Purple Talk, a Prince podcast where I share my thoughts on the Prince musical singularity. I'm Richard Cole, your imagination funk soloist, and we're going to just dive right into our topics today. And our first topic of the day is this thing called entropy. All right, so this segment I am dedicating to all of our Prince fans and Amari Purple Talk listeners out there that are first responders, that's police, fire department, healthcare services. Also, this is dedicated to all of the food service workers out there, restaurant owners, their staff, waiters, waitresses, kitchen staff, fast food restaurants, delivery drivers for those establishments, delivery drivers in general, truck drivers, keeping the supply chain going, and also a shout out to all of the teachers and childcare providers out there that in states where daycares are still mandated to remain open, and as well as take on an additional load of children as well. So this segment is definitely a shout out and a thank you to everyone out there. What this segment is not for is the rich. Not all of them, just the greedy, the ones that don't know how to give. So let's go ahead and dive into this topic. And here we go. All right, so I pictured these last few days going a little bit differently in my mind. My birthday was on Wednesday, the 18th, and took a few days off, scheduled days off for that. And while I was off, day by day, minute by minute, the world around me is changing. Now, it had been changing in the week prior because we discussed this, kind of touched on it on last week's episode as well, to where the thing was at that time for a lot of us, it was just kind of remaining calm and whatever we need to do to get calm, whether it's meditation or prayer or yoga, listening to Prince, whatever it took. But in the days, even since last week's episode, the world minute by minute, day by day is changing. A lot of us are under stay-at-home orders, and for the most part, seems like we're all complying. Of course, we're all still unable to go get things like toilet paper, hand sanitizer, things of that nature, but hopefully that will subside, and as those supply chains and manufacturers kind of get back into the swing of things and restocking the stores, places where there are groups, your numbers are limited, to actual stay-at-home orders, to where just your essential organizations are allowed to stay open. And that would be, of course, any healthcare facility, grocery store, so we still have access to food. We can still get out, take a walk, but for the most part, to kind of help contain this thing, most of us are under that stay-at-home order. So, like I said, it's a lot of changes, a lot to keep up with. We're constantly being asked to sort of rearrange our social calendar literally at the drop of a hat. And I guess the thing, for what I've been able to observe is is, for the most part, on social media, we're all kind of taking it in stride. It's a responsibility. We're doing the right thing. We feel in our hearts we're doing the right thing. I believe the Washington Post, sometime middle of last week, put out a simulator that would demonstrate different scenarios. What would happen if we continued business as usual with this virus? With that scenario, there's no hope of containment at all and no way of wiping it out under that scenario. And then if you did it with limited numbers of people, and of course you still have a few people getting out there and that type of thing, though it would spread a little bit slower than the previous scenario, it's still not enough to contain it within a satisfactory amount of time and try to develop a vaccine or cure or even an immunity buildup. It would take more time for those things to develop. And with the stay-at-home model, to where this can be limited in a shorter amount of time. So again, we all kind of in that mindset of that this is the right thing to do. So, I mean, the world's not coming to an end. Aliens are not coming down from the sky. No one's attacking at any point. There's no need for 120 rolls of toilet paper. Stop hogging all the hand sanitizer, that type of thing. We're just doing the right thing and hope that within the next few weeks, the next couple of months or so, that we can get this to a level to where we can begin to wipe it out. So again, for those of us that, or for my listeners out there that are, again, in healthcare, whether it's law enforcement, fire department, EMS personnel, teachers, again, food service workers, having to shut their doors and just focus on carry out or just focus on delivery. These are definitely our heroes at the moment. Of course, every single day when it comes to your hospitals and hospital personnel, law enforcement, fire department, EMS, those are heroes on a daily basis, and their job, it's not a matter of choosing to stay at home. It's a matter of choosing to make a difference. So that's why we're saluting them. And now with this type of crisis, some of that burden of responsibility has also fallen to, again, our food service places or grocery stores, even though they have limited hours or closed to walk-in public and limited to delivery or carry out. Those are heroes as well, because we're asking them to still perform a service. And food is a necessity. Not everyone has a gourmet cook in their household. Not everyone has a significant other or parent or grandparent that is absolutely superb in the kitchen, So, they carry out a service. And again, a lot of times they don't have the option to get to stay home. So, and two, in order to maintain a wage, a living wage, they're out there in the trenches too. So we got to give it up to them. Those are heroes. Here at Amari Purple Talk, you are definitely saluted and you have my thanks. Myself, my day job, I do not, in my opinion, do not perform an essential function. There are aspects to the place that I work in which they do perform an essential function, and my hats off and my thanks to those personnel as well. But for where I am and some of the people that I work with, it's not essential in my opinion at all. But we will be out in the trenches, as far as I know, tomorrow. Because like I said, I was scheduled off anyway for the 5 days that I took off for my birthday. So I will return. As I'm taping this is a Sunday night. So Monday, I will be in the trenches as this airs. And I'll see what's going on. Like I said, I've looked into a lot of things, and to me, we're not provided fully with the equipment that's needed to be able to perform our functions safely from day to day. So we'll see. Like I said, I've been gone for a few days, so I don't know what's happened, what's changed as much. And two, things were changing day by day as far as policies and procedures and things like that. So I will see. But again, like I said, I don't feel that in that capacity I make a difference in any way, shape, or form. I feel better when I'm creating. I'll put it that way. So that being said, we'll see tomorrow what goes on, and we'll probably, if you follow me on social media, you will have my update. But the goal in life is to pursue freedom, ownership, and my own personal definition of funk. So we'll just leave it at that for right now. But again, like I said, this segment is my salute to every single one of you out there that performs the essential function. And the reason why I titled this particular piece, this thing called Entropy, because there also are those out there in panic mode. Now, I just finished watching a documentary on the radio broadcast of War of the Worlds that Orson Welles directed. And if you can imagine a world without social media, without television, and your source of entertainment was the radio, and given that particular point in time where virtually, literally every week over the radio there was a breaking news story, the crash of the Hindenburg, Hitler's Nuremberg rallies, and the stuff that was going on that seemed to want to, for the most part, seemed like that it was going to bring America closer and closer to the brink of war, which by 1941 that became the reality. But in 1938 it was just bombarded with bad news, bad news, bad news. And now there was also entertainment. Like I said, there's no television, so your serials of the day, if they weren't playing in a movie theater, then you would have live radio plays, to which War of the Worlds was one of the ones that was broadcast and directed by Orson Welles. And the way that he directed it, the way it was orchestrated, everything, basically, a lot of people in America thought literally that aliens were coming down to Earth and attacking everyone. And getting caught up in the entropy. There were people that were packing their bags, that were leaving town. Washington State had a small town that had the unfortunate incident of having their power go out. So that's adding fuel to the fire. You have people looking out their windows, and if you saw a bunch of cars, then you got in your car and went with them, or you looked out your window and saw nothing going on and just thought everybody already left. That type of thing. There was mass panic. People were even committing suicide in fear that, well, I don't want to get taken by the aliens, so I'm going to end it before they end me. So this type of stuff is what was going on. Not once did they mention that toilet paper was missing, that the stuff was flying off the shelves at the stores. None of that was mentioned. But the lesson learned is that this sort of made Americans a little bit more sensitive to things like propaganda. And yeah, we would like to think that we're a little bit more sophisticated as a society, but there are still segments that either misread the information or they fall for misinformation and tend to kind of create a sort of suspension of disbelief, and some of these far-fetched ideas like the hoarding of toilet paper and the hoarding of hand sanitizer, and those hoarding it to capitalize on those fears as well. So in whatever it is, like 80 some odd years, 80 plus years, that we have not matured enough as a society to look into ourselves and not give into the entropy that puts you into panic mode, but centering yourself in order to know how and when to do the right thing. Because like I said, I think for the most part, we've been sensitive to a lot of people that are in the trenches, like those we've acknowledged. But at the same time, it's a scary time. But the thing is not to get paralyzed by fear. It's just center yourself. And like I said, when there's too many moving parts, sit and look for that opening. And I would say for me, so far, pretty grateful for what we have here. And I also follow that ancient Egyptian saying of take that only what you need. So, there's no greed. There's nothing more that's needed. We'll just do what we can, make it day by day, and we'll address the crisis as it happens. Like I said, tomorrow, there's a lot of uncertainty that I'm going to be facing tomorrow, but I'll make that judgment call at that moment. But like I said, the whole thing about entropy, it stemmed from there was an interview with Prince on the Today Show. Again, I cannot for the life of me find it on YouTube. The most I was able to find were a couple of GIFs, to which I did a screenshot to create the in-show graphic for this episode. But I have it on VHS. I don't have a VHS player hooked up to anything, so I haven't had a chance to really do that and rewatch it and kind of get a fresh take on it in time for this broadcast. But like I said, what I do remember during that time, you're talking December of 1999, Prince is promoting Rave into the Joy Fantastic. He's also promoting the Rave into the Year 2000. That was sort of the upcoming event that this interview was promoting partially. And, it was also that period, if those of us are old enough to remember the whole Y2K scare, meaning that all the computers in the world were calibrated based on a certain, I don't know how you put it, timestamp, so to speak. And there was no way for it to officially roll over into 2000. Now, all your IT personnel all over the world were scrambling, getting their companies to recalibrate these things so that when the changeover happened, it would recognize time as being the year 2000. And systems that were dependent on that sort of day-to-day, year-to-year rollover, countdown or clock or whatever, things would continue to run smoothly. But the big rumor and all this entropy again was the fear was that since it would roll back to say maybe 1900 or something instead of rolling over to 2000, then certain systems would shut down. There would be power outages all over the world. Computers would shut down. And the internet was fairly new, but it was new enough for us to have gained a dependency on it by that point. So that would have been wiped out and all of this. But literally people were fearing that it was the end of the world. And kind of in similar fashion to now, hoarding things, food, water, that was the big one at the time. Because there was just going to be this big lockdown and nobody was going to be able to function like the 1970s and 80s didn't exist, where we did not have a reliance on computers to the magnitude that we do now. So Prince's response to that was to not give in to what he called entropy, but to turn the law back to God. Now, the listeners of Amari Purple Talk are a very diverse group, and I also have my own personal views as well. So that being said, it's just a matter of looking into either yourself or looking deeper into the system that you subscribe to and finding your strength that way, instead of panicking, going into panic mode, freaking out, having riots and things of that nature. It's just, again, just center yourself and just strive to do the right thing and try to help one another if you can, or have an understanding and a respect of what people do. Again, like I said, our new heroes, definitely alongside the first responders, unique to this situation, like I said, are people, while everyone's staying at home. And like I said, we all don't, my wife's an outstanding cook, so I'm pretty good, and I'm not half bad in the kitchen myself. But like I said, not everyone has that significant other or grandparent or parent or sibling or whoever that is outstanding, and you're probably dependent, or you might be in between paychecks and may not be able to get to the store, but you got enough to get something fast and quick, or maybe have pizza for that day plus some leftovers. Who knows? But these people that are maintaining, dealing with a huge drop in their profit margin, or no longer in the position to get tips, or restaurant owners that have had to lay off everyone but maybe the cooking staff. These are now the heroes of the moment as well. Again, teachers having to scramble and use their creativity to come up with curriculums to still teach from a distance. And thank God we have the technology to do that. Can you imagine what would have happened if this was the 70s or even the 80s, for that matter? There was no internet, not for, the mass population. It didn't exist. So, to kind of continue the flow and the momentum of what was being taught earlier, even though you're closing universities, or now you're at the point that even, your grade schools and junior highs and high schools are closing, to maintain a level of contact. Inner city schools where the children are dependent on, breakfast and lunch from that school to keep channels open so they can still get fed. These are our heroes of the moment. So, I don't know. Didn't mean to turn this into a huge rant. But again, like I said, these are our heroes. And there's a lot of listeners out there that fall into that category, or maybe related to someone in that category, like I am. There's a multitude of friends and family that fall into one of those positions somewhere. And, my hats are off to them. My thanks, my respect, everything. So, and thank you guys as well. And, hopefully listening to this, there's only so much you could do at home, but hopefully this helps a little bit. Take an hour out of your day and, take a listen, or just kind of use this as background noise if you have to work from home or something. Who knows? But also, too, keep calm, listen to Prince, break out that favorite Prince album, and, either escape or help you deal with it, do what you have to do, and we'll get through this. And I've seen this hashtag alone together. I like that. It's like, yeah, we're kind of we're hanging out at the crib, but we're still in contact with one another. So, and we're also checking up on each other and making sure everything is all good. So we're going to keep going. We'll get through this, and I'm sure probably this week as well, things will change by the day or by the minute. Who knows? Or we'll see how we adapt to this situation, and we'll, like I said, we'll get through it. So we're going to end this topic, and we're going to move on to our next topic, and that is going to be my thoughts on the perfect Sign of the Times Deluxe edition. Okay, so there's not a lot that's going on in Prince news this week, besides the fact that Paisley Park has shut down, and again, part of, as the responsible thing to do. The celebration in June has been postponed. As far as I know, like I said, we still have delivery channels that are open. And yes, the commitment is for essentials. And I mean, healthcare essentials, even deliveries to the first responders. Because I know here, they still have to go through their normal supply chain to get supplies. Anything additional they would have to apply for FEMA. They can't get it from the state resources because the hospitals take priority as well as they should. So you still have to have those supply chains going to get, personal protective equipment for those folks. So to be honest, I really wouldn't be upset if my pre-order of the Rainbow Children and the One Night Alone or Up All Night set, if that's delayed, by all means delay it as long as you like. Get that protective gear definitely to each and every person at those organizations and any individuals that feel the need to order it and need protective gear as well. It's just albums, and yes, sometimes albums matter, but in this situation, yeah, if it comes on time, cool. If it's delayed or postponed for whatever reason, I'm good with that too. So anyway, like I said, not a lot of heavy news that's out there. So with my free time, I was thinking, just kind of watching people still talk about the Sign of the Times album and how it's their favorite album. I watched the Violet Realities episode of the Sign of the Times album and Things You Didn't Know. They're a great podcast. They're on YouTube. By all means, check them out. And they also have really cool exclusives. They get the breaking news on a lot of this stuff that comes out. So I would say probably when a Sign of the Times Deluxe is released, they will be the first ones or among the first to let us know. So great, but it was a great segment. Definitely a couple of things I didn't know as well. So, and Sign of the Times is my favorite album. But it got me thinking about what I would really, really like out of a Sign of the Times Super Deluxe Edition or box set. And it's really dependent upon who releases it. Like I said, the rumor mill has this thing coming out in June. And I'm guessing that it's going to be pretty much more of the same, which isn't bad. And what I mean by more of the same is that we're going to use the 1999 Super Deluxe as a template. The Purple Rain Deluxe Edition was pretty good. It could have been more, should have been more. But for what we got at that time, that was pretty good. It was a pretty good step in the right direction. Although there was a lot more that could have been done to make it better. But the 1999 Super Deluxe Edition is probably the best template. And if it's going to be Warner Brothers swinging for the fences and getting that sort of last kind of almost cash grab before they have to turn those master tapes over to Sony in 2021, then my speculation would be that it would be more of the same. So it would be similar to the 1999 Super Deluxe, meaning that we will get a remastering of the original Sign of the Times album, and that should be about probably 2 discs still, I think. And then you'll probably get about 2 discs of vault material. Well, let's see, 2 discs of vault material, a disc of the singles, the B-sides, the extended versions, the extended B-side versions, and possibly an actual recording, kind of or mastered and properly mixed recording from one of the dates of the Sign of the Times tour. And as far as the DVD, I would say something from the tour that's not the Sign of the Times movie, because that's different licensing. And there is a Blu-ray that was sold overseas. A lot of people already have it already over here. But there's a sort of Blu-ray, has a lot of extras as far as documentaries and things of that nature on that. But with what Warner Brothers would be allowed to release via permission from the estate, there's so many places you could go with that. So, I mean, it could be maybe a cleaned up version of the First Avenue show. It could be one of the other professionally shot dates from the Sign of the Times tour. Another bonus would be the Paisley Park benefit on New Year's Eve, which has Miles Davis as a guest. So there's so much material, and a lot that was pointed out in that Sign of the Times Things You Didn't Know from the Violet Reality. There's so much you could just pack into a box set. But again, if it's Warner Brothers doing it, like I said, I think it would just be a template of the 1999 Super Deluxe, and those are the things you would get. Like I said, a remastering of the album, singles and B-sides and extended versions of the singles and B-sides, a live recording CD, and a live DVD. Now, say if there is no Sign of the Times Super Deluxe coming from Warner Brothers in June or by Christmas or anytime during 2020, and everything gets turned over to Sony for the licensing agreement, then that would open the door for a significant, and I'm not going to call it a Super Deluxe edition. I think that's kind of a term that's kind of limited to what Warner Brothers is releasing. However, this would be a serious collector's box set. And for examples, I would say look at Sony's complete Bitches Brew box set by Miles Davis. I would say look at anything significant in the box set area for Bob Dylan. The most recent box set was his Rolling Thunder Review tour. That was around 1975, and if I'm not mistaken, it's virtually the complete box set of the tour. So I think it's like about 10 CDs, if I'm not mistaken. So those are the examples to look at once Sony gets a hold of it, because you'll get this significant packaging. You'll get possibly, I don't know, I would say 2, 5. So if you get roughly 5 CDs with a Warner Brother release, I would say expand that to at least 7 to 10 on the CD side of it. And the CD side of it, would include definitely way more vault material covering that era. And as far, you would have more to bring to the table as far as the tour. So you can put 2 to 3 different CDs. Like I said, you can include the First Avenue rehearsal. You can include an actual CD from one of the dates on the tour that was professionally recorded. I'm not sure how Sony does. I don't think there's really necessarily DVDs included. Now with Jimi Hendrix, when Sony took over the licensing from Universal for Jimi Hendrix master recordings, they reissued the 3 albums released in his lifetime, which was Are You Experienced, Axis Bold as Love, and Electric Ladyland. And with the re-release of those, for a limited time, there was included it was a DVD. They weren't very long. That was sort of my only complaint, but they were sort of kind of keeping up with what the Beatles were doing with their 2009 remasters of their catalog. There was a file embedded in the CD that you could play on your computer if you had QuickTime, and it was a little mini documentary about the recording of the album. That was definitely shorter than what was on the Jimi Hendrix DVDs, but still, they weren't all that long. But you got a bonus DVD talking about the making of the album. So with the Sign of the Times, as far as including DVDs, not necessarily a documentary, but including, and that would make it unique too, include a DVD or a couple of DVDs with a tour performance, as well as the Paisley Park benefit performance on New Year's Eve of 1987. So for me, that would be my ideal box set. And like I said, I have a feeling that would come from Sony. And granted, even if Warner Brothers does come out with a Super Deluxe edition, like I said, whether it could be June or whether it's Christmas, or like I said, again, any time before they have to turn over those master recordings over to Sony, they could still release that. Because I feel like if a serious box set of Sign of the Times were to happen, then here we are, we're in 2020, so they can release that now, Warner Brothers could, and say by 2027, that would put it at what, the 40th anniversary of the Sign of the Times album. Then I would expect Sony to have taken the time and the care and, you know, the thought to really make that a comprehensive box set with that. So, and we would be in a position, like I said, we'd have to eat our Wheaties and eat our vegetables and exercise every day and give up soda and stuff, and, you know, just stay healthy and in shape to get that box set in 2027. So that's kind of where I'm thinking on that. If we would get both. We would get a Warner Brothers release, and several years down the line, we'll get a comprehensive Sign of the Times box set. Because the appetite will be there, definitely. And just the fact that you could have more. And then there's collectors that are out there that they'll have both, you know. Or I'll end up with both, because it's like, well, I'm going to get this because you never know. I mean, this might be, you know, what Warner Brothers puts out may end up being the definitive, you know, deluxe set. So there you have it. That is my thought on a Sign of the Times deluxe set, box set. So for me, it would be a remastering of the original Sign of the Times album, because we definitely need it. So it would be that. Of course, a CD that would have the singles and the B-sides, as well as extended versions of the singles and B-sides from that album. Of course, you have the vault material that will probably cover everything from Dream Factory to Camille to Crystal Ball, all the configurations before it got whittled down to the 2 albums that made up Sign of the Times. So basically every recording relevant, that's the key word, relevant to those sessions. Just the Sign of the Times sessions. That would be included. So that's 2 or 3 more CDs. Definitely some live recordings. I would say indefinitely include the live at First Avenue rehearsal, commonly known amongst the collector circuit as For Those of You on Valium, because during his introduction, as he was introducing the band, he's saying, and for those of you on Valium, my name is Prince. So definitely include that as a CD or DVD. Definitely include a live recording of one of the shows on that tour. And I would say just one CD of one of the dates on the tour, because that leaves the field open that if you want to do a box set on the tour itself, then you can have a box set of as many recordings and even after shows as well. You know, just do a separate box set for that particular era on that one. But for the box set or comprehensive box set, definitely one recording, because you'll have the rehearsal, and that can either be a separate CD or DVD. And then include a DVD of the Paisley Park benefit show from December 31st, 1987. So that would be my absolute dream Sign of the Times box set. So what's most important is, what do you guys think? What are your ideas for a box set? What should it include? What type of vault material would you include? What type of live recordings, DVDs, live DVDs? What would you include in it? Just leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts. And now we're going to move on to our Purple Spotlight. And our Purple Spotlight, we're taking a different turn on. Our Purple Spotlight today is going to be on the Wrecka Stow. That's right. So when you want to go buy a Sam Cooke album, where would you go? To Wrecka Stow. So again, there's so many businesses that have been impacted by the virus, you know, and the stay-at-home orders by your respective state, you know, the federal guidelines that are in place, things of that nature. So we have entire, you know, stores that are closed. I mean, malls that are closed, other types of retail establishments. But for us within the Prince musical singularity, also taking a hit are our record stores. And granted, it's cool, we've got streaming, and I do listen on streaming. I have Apple Music, I have Tidal, so that's cool, and it's a convenience. But I also love physical media. I love vinyl. I love my cassettes. I love my CDs. So, you know, where there's things, I mean, I do get online, you know, I mean, Amazon is pretty much the go-to, but I also like my little brick and mortar places. You know, I like my vintage vinyls. I like my half price books. You know, I like those places a lot. And those places are taking a hit. I've gotten emails and even seen on social media, their doors are closing. As far as half price books, as far as I know, you could still call and see if they have an item in. You can pay for it, I guess, over the phone, or place an online order for pickup, and you can go and I guess they'll run it right out to your car or something. Now, that was an email that I received either Thursday or Friday, I think, regarding that. So you may want to check your local half-price books and see what the actual procedure is, or even at this stage, if they're still even open at this point. But I know that Vintage Vinyl here announced that they were closing their doors, and I think that was as of Friday, 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. And, there's a lot of these stores. There's, movie theaters that are impacted. Now, you have your big chains, but the way the movie industry works, there's a tiny margin for profit when it comes to, so they're dependent on these big blockbusters that come in, and they're, whatever movies they can get as well, that they can show, and as many people they can get into a theater, they're heavily dependent on that. And now with what's going on, those businesses are impacted. But as far as even your smaller theaters, your mom and pop theaters, that just one little building, they're not a chain, they just exist only in your city or town, they barely turn a profit. But with this, and they're going to be impacted for a while. So even once this blows over, to try to recover. Now, we hear things about federal relief, but, it depends on if they can qualify for that, or if they can get it, or once they get it, will it be enough? It's going to be back up to us once we can kind of get back to a semblance of normal, to also show these people some love too. It's a little different than the food service, because like I said, food is an essential service. But at the same time, any retailer, they have to support themselves. So for a lot of retailers, this is their dream. It's not like, okay, I'm working this 9 to 5, so I can, not only have a roof over my head and food to eat and support a family and things of that nature, but also to be able to feed my creativity, whether it's through this podcast or whatever projects I create. It could be photography, it could be music, it could be this, it could be that. These are people that are literally at one point or another living their dream, living their dream of owning a record store, living their dream of owning a restaurant or a bar, living their dream of owning a little bookstore, whether it's a used bookstore or a bookstore that sells both books and records, or whatever your business is, small business, definitely, they're not dependent on a huge corporation, they're being free. But if we can't make it out the door, to support them or whatever, or, we don't want to jeopardize ourselves. We don't want to jeopardize anyone else's health as well. Again, we're all being responsible, but this is sort of the ripple effect. These are the things that they're going to be impacted. And like I said, again, once this blows over, we got to get back into the record stores. Like I said, ordering online is cool. Streaming is cool. But like I said, these are people that provide a service, and a service that we love, because Amazon doesn't always have that rare Prince record that's there. There's a place in the UK, I don't know how they're affected by what's going on, but Rocket Pool, that was definitely someplace I wanted to check out and order from, because they had stuff that I know I can't find over here anywhere, or if so, somebody wants $1 million for it or something. So, these mom and pop stores and, record stores, they're going to need that love. We got to give them that Wrecka Stow love when things go back to normal. as we get our lives back on track. We got to recover financially as well. But once we do, like I said, if we have to go spend those dollars, we got to go do it. We have to go out and do it. We got to live our lives, go shopping, as as the W once said. And that was some crazy times too. But we have to get back and give these people our support. I work on an article. It's called "What's in the Crate," and it's just basically me going through my vinyl collection and picking out an album. Could be something that I've lived with for years. Could be something that I never got to give a lot of attention to or listen to. And some things I find in there that I'm really listening to for the first time, just finally just making the time to do it and writing about my experiences, whether it's memories about that record as well as the history of the recording of it or the context of the times that it was in. But one of the ones I'm working on now, it's about the Rufusized album by Rufus and Shaka Khan. And of course, again, if you've read The Beautiful Ones, you know why I'm writing about this one, folks. And I'm going to reference a lot of that in there. But part of that relating to my listening history of Shaka Khan. Now, in 1979, when I was 13 and was getting an allowance for doing things like cutting the grass and stuff like that, I was finally in a position of getting my own money to get my own things. And at 13, and with that type of an allowance, that meant only one thing: records or comic books. So by this time, and there was a place that was 4 blocks from my house that was called Hudson's Embassy. And there was about 2 or 3 locations across the city. And it was just strictly like just an inner city record store, black owned, and one of the best places on earth to buy records then. So with my brand new allowance at almost 30, I was 12. I was going to turn 13 later, in a couple of months later. So anyway, so got my hard-earned allowance, and just within the span of that month, there were 3 new singles that were dropped that I just had to get my hands on. One was the Jacksons' Shake Your Body Down to the Ground, because I had seen them jam that on American Bandstand and was like, I gotta get that one for sure. The next was the Bee Gees' Too Much Heaven, because I had seen them debut that on, it was a benefit for UNICEF that was on television, and came in just in time to catch them perform that, and was like, oh, that's a beautiful song, gotta get that one. And Do You Love What You Feel by Shaka Khan, Rufus and Shaka Khan. So those were the first 3 that I bought with my own money from Hudson's Embassy, and the actual owner operated out of that particular location the majority of the time. So over the years, kind of developed a rapport with the owner and the rest of his family, because he had some of his family members working the counters as well. And as I was getting into high school, this was the place where I'm buying Shalimar's 3 for Love album, Lakeside's Fantastic Voyage album, Rick James Street Songs, 1999 I bought there. I think Vanity 6 I bought there too. And What Time Is It? Now, when it came to What Time Is It, Vanity 6, 1999, I would take my lunch money, the money I would have for lunch, and I would go on the Hostess Cupcake diet. So it wouldn't be burgers and fries that week, folks. No, it was the Hostess Cupcake diet. And by that Friday, so what I didn't spend on lunch, by that Friday, or whatever day I can make it to the Wrecka store, folks, then that's where I would get, that's where I got, definitely 1999 was a Hostess Cupcake diet one, and What Time Is It was definitely a Hostess Cupcake diet purchase. So, huge memories. And then, getting older, there was places like We had Peaches Records here. We used to have Street Side Records. Now, both of those are no longer in existence, and that's just because the age of, well, maybe not the age of the CD, but the age of streaming, Napster, Apple Music became the death knell for those places. But like your even smaller places, your Vintage Vinyls, your Euclid Records, your, wherever town you're in, hell, Tower Records in California, and I lived out there for a while. That was a great place to go to. But hell, Electric Fetus in Minneapolis, another one that's closing their doors this week due to what's going on. So, I mean, a lot of us have some serious memories of maybe your earliest record stores that were, or maybe hopefully they're still in existence, but definitely a place like Hudson's Embassy is a treasure trove of memories. My best record buying. Cool, there was Peaches. Yeah, cool, I've been to a Tower Records. And cool, I get to go to a Vintage Vinyl, and cool, I get to go to a Half Price Books. But that's the beauty. It's like, and I think with kind of later now having rediscovered vinyl, it's still that joy of having that big piece of cardboard with the big 12-inch vinyl inside. And, you just can't just pop it on in your car, like a CD, or back in the day when we had cassette. That was sort of the selling point. But at the same time, there was just a magic about that purchase you just made and wondering about what you're going to hear once you plop it onto that turntable and drop the needle on it. I mean, there's a magic to that you just can't explain it. And then you got the artwork, you've got the liner notes, who wrote what, who played on what, who sang on what, just all that information is just right there, and you just kind of take yourself on a journey with it. And I mean, you still get the same with CDs a little bit, depending on the CD. Definitely something like a Super Deluxe edition. You got the liner notes with the book and everything, just having that physical media there. There's an energy to that. And again, before, I guess we were taking these for granted, and now we're taking a very hard look at everything. And like I said, the takeaway for me is that for a lot of these people, yeah, it's their dream. This is their freedom. They're not dependent on somebody else. Yeah, granted, it's hard work, but kind of, also where I would like to be as well. It's working hard at something that I love, and I know beyond the shadow of a doubt that it makes a difference, and not just, when it comes to an individual, like say if I get a positive comment about any episode or a multitude of episodes of this podcast, it's a bonus. But to see something start to finish as a creation makes a tremendous amount of difference in me, and it makes me a happier person, a freer person, and on and on. So, when it comes to somebody that owns, it could be a record shop or whatever business, some of you out there are probably either small business owners, or you have a dream goal to own a business or do something or promote some skill that you love and be able to do it on a daily basis. And yes, you want to be recognized, and yes, you want the financial rewards, but like I said, this, with this podcast, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's working at it and trying to get better at it. And it can be a thankless job because there's a lot of late hours, and I have to work this around a place again where, yes, I'm grateful, and yes, it's a responsibility, but the work-life balance absolutely sucks. So I have to work around that to produce this. and any other idea that comes forth, but it's worth it. But like I said, there are a lot of you out there, like I said, that's in those trenches as well. And this has kind of either slowed or halted your momentum to a certain degree. What this has done, like I said, for me, like I said, I've seen where something is just absolutely just too big. You can't just ride up to an elevator to see the top person, or the HR. You can't just ride it. It's not an elevator right away. It's not even across town, so to speak. But, and like I said, the things that you're quoting regulation chapter and verse, and you just have the world's hate thrust upon you, it's done. Basically, I left all of my battles on the playground in school. At this particular stage, it should just be about just, again, being free, being an owner, and finding the definition of funk within that somewhere, whether it's the notes or the space in between the notes to do that. It's, where, again, it's grateful and it's being responsible, but at the same time, there's too much negative going in, and I don't feel that I make a difference in any way, shape, or form in that particular outlet. This is where I'm happiest. The other things that I create and work on are I'm happiest doing. And you can best believe that when this dust settles, that I will find an outlet to maintain responsibility and be even more grateful, but at the same time feeling like I make a difference. Because and again, it's not necessarily, because a lot of the thank yous do feel a little empty to me when it comes to that end of it. The thank yous I get for this podcast mean a whole hell of a lot more than that. And, but it's the thing. I've been at places where it had nothing to do with creativity, but at the end of the day, I felt like I was making a difference. Like, I would beat the alarm clock up just to get to that place, or, I would put in an 8-hour day and felt like I was doing something. But yeah, this, that sort of plantation gig now, no, and especially with what's going on, it's too big, too big, and things aren't getting to the people. Like I said, there are people that do perform essential functions that aren't getting the love and the recognition that they deserve as well. And don't get me wrong, it does come from some places. There are elements, like I said, there are good human beings on this planet, and they do give credit where credit is due, and they do speak up for these people as well. But when I just, it's just a lack of humanity. But we're not going to keep this on. We're not going to stay on a negative tip, because there's too much negative stuff going on. And it's at a point, definitely lives are at stake. And I think that's what my whole gripe about that plantation existence is that it's like, no, you're patting yourselves on the back, saying you're doing this and you're doing that. And, I'm sorry, you listeners out there, we know one individual that has done so much charity for various people and organizations and never said a word, never wanted the word to get out. And it took his passing for people to come out and say, hey, he did this for me. Hey, he donated this. He donated that. He made sure we got this when this disaster happened. Or he made sure, that one of the best drummers in the world got health care when he couldn't get it any other place, or through any other means. It's like patting yourselves on the back, but yet and still the people that are sort of making your brand, so to speak, you know, not looking out for us, not one iota. So, like I said, we're not going to keep this on a negative tip. We're not going to make this the rant show. But let's bring it back to the record stores and the movie theaters, the bookstores, because we're going to have some books that should still be coming out later this year. Some Prince books, Prince related books. Next year we should be getting Dwayne Tudor's book out as well. And, we got to get to the bookstore and support that. Or, like I said, go through whoever you have to go through. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's these brick and mortar locations, your record stores, your comic book shops, bookstores, any retail establishment, whatever, it could be a florist, it could be, I don't know, a jeweler or whatever. Anything, like I said, because these are people's dreams as well, and they're putting that into action, and like I said, because of what's going on, it's either slowed their momentum or halted their momentum. So we definitely have to be there when everything is settled and we can get back to, get kind of things back to normal. And even once things get back to normal, let's not forget this goodwill that we have for everybody. Let's, continue to recognize these folks and, let them know that we appreciate what they've done and what they continue to do. And, we're all trying to get there together, alone, together, like that. So we're going to end on that positive note. And now we're going to move on to our Bite the Boots segment. And the Bite the Boots segment is a segment that highlights a circulating bootleg vault recording or video for consideration for an official release by the estate. And today's Bite the Boot selection is the Hit and Run tour from 2000. Now, this tour, to me, had another one of my favorite lineups of the new power generation. This is a tour that I missed out going to. Had some friends that have been to at least one of the shows. And, one of those things where, the golden age of the cell phone was just starting. And, I remember getting that phone call and the message and the voicemail, and it's, everybody at the concert and they're playing little snippets of it for me in the voicemail. And it's like just what little I heard, just, knowing the lineup of that band. Woo, I wish I was there. So this is definitely one that I feel should be released by the estate in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not necessarily a box set, really, because it really wasn't anything, because it was just prior to the Rainbow Children era, and we're pretty much getting what we can out of that for right now with the reissues. Maybe a singular performance, which would be maybe a complete set list from that particular tour. Maybe that might come out one day, who knows. But I would say this was sort of like, I don't know, it was a precursor to what, as far as musicianship, what you were going to get with the One Night Alone tour. But this, at that particular time, and especially as the Rainbow Children was being released, as the One Night Alone tour, the sort of announcement of, I don't know if it was around that time or not, but that sort of list that came out of all the Prince songs that he was never going to do live ever again, and that was just based on his Jehovah's Witness faith, and a lot of it too, and this happens to a lot of musicians when they get older, especially punk bands. This happens too, where you're in your 40s and your 50s, and that one song you wrote when you were 20, it just doesn't, it's kind of creepy. You're an old guy singing it now. So there was a lot of, there was a lot of that with that, but mostly because of the Jehovah's Witness faith with Prince, I think, too. So this to me was sort of, when you kind of look at it in its context, not as it was happening, because as it was happening was like, for me, I just kind of remember really looking forward to what the next record was going to be, because here was this tour. There was no album attached to it. He was doing mostly the hits, but at that time it was like, okay, we're not going to hear those hits again. But again, like I said, if you widen that window and you expand it out to 2004 and what you got with the Musicology tour, then it was the last time you got the hits for a while. But at that time, though, it really just kind of felt like that was the last time you were going to hear those hits on a more permanent basis. It really felt like that. But at the same time, it felt like, okay, maybe it was like you were getting a new Prince, but you just didn't know what kind of new Prince you were getting. So was it like something that, because the energy from those performances was just, to me, was so elevated, where, there was a good energy from the One Night Alone material, the tour, on that. But, it was a refined, it was kind of like a lack of a better comparison. The One Night Alone was more like an aged wine kind of a thing, where the hit and run, it's like we kind of seen that high energy level from other Prince tours before, and have really benefited us as fans by kind of that next year or so. Or really, you would have gotten a pretty strong album, then a tour of that high energy level, and then a really great album after that one as well. Maybe not as big as the last one, but maybe equally, or I don't know, kind of like a Sign of the Times Lovesexy kind of an energy. Just that energy between that album, that tour, that album, and that tour. To me, this is one of those tours to me. And there was, again, like I said, no album that was attached to it. But like I said, it made you really optimistic for what was coming next. Because we really hadn't had a strong Prince album at that time. We had sort of, we had Raven to the Joy Fantastic, which for me was okay. But you also had The Vault, Old Friends for Sale, that was like, I wasn't feeling it. That one, some of the songs in that kind of grew over me over time, but I mainly bought that because of the long version of She Spoke to Me. To me, that's really the highlight of that. But there's other songs on there that over time I kind of enjoy. But like I said, those weren't really albums you could just build a really bona fide tour on, especially especially with Raven to the Joy Fantastic. The sales just weren't there enough to warrant a tour to support it. And like I said, the song selection on Hit and Run, it was mostly just, it really leaned heavy on the hits on that. And like I said, with just the musicianship and the energy that they brought to it. I mean, this was sort of John Blackwell's first appearance on drums. You had Rhonda Smith still on the bass. You still had Morris Hayes on the keys. You had the addition of Kit Blackshire on keyboards. But you also had the interesting choice of Najee on sax. Now, a lot of us that grew up on, black radio, and especially into the 80s, and especially that jazz fusion that started to take hold. I think Miles Davis kicked it off with the You're Under Arrest album, and then you sort of had like these other people come out of the woodwork, sort of like your David Sanborns, Dave Cobbs, but Najee was another one of those, and especially being black too, where he would come out with these jazz fusion albums that really got a lot of airplay on black radio during like the late 80s and into the 90s. So to hear this cat, as a member of the NPG, that was like a big eye opener on that one. And somebody posted, and I had this, I think I still have this on VHS too, another one of those, I guess due to scheduling or something, or just to have it and just watch it over and over. Prince's appearance on the Tonight Show, promoting, had to have been Rainbow Children at the time. Yeah, because he was on two nights. The first night he did The Work, and then the second night he did The Ballad of Dorothy Parker, which that is one of my favorite singular Prince performances, meaning that as far as television appearances and or music video appearances, this is in my top 5, that Ballad of Dorothy Parker performance. And the funkiness, the jazz, the way they threw a little bit of Madhouse in there, and not just, well, really, it wasn't even so much as Najee's sax playing on that, but the flute playing on that really stood out for me on that. So again, that particular lineup was amazing on that. And like I said, this lineup, they toured from November of 2000 all the way until May of 2001 on that. And this was mainly just in the United States. And like I said, I'm surprised I don't have any personal material in the collection. Actually, there was a lot of stuff from Celebration 2002. I have a lot of material from that era as far as live recording and stuff, which I thought I had some of the hit and run from here, but I don't. So, but I have heard a lot of it. And to me, this would be something that would work not necessarily as a box set, but you can either take a selection of the best performances from this tour, and this is pretty much the way most live albums are done. They'll take 2 or 3 or a number of significant dates from the tour and select what they feel are the best performances from each of those. So you may get, say, a performance of Kiss from June of whatever year, and then you'll have a performance of Purple Rain from November that, was just better than anything else on the tour. And you would kind of take sections from each of those dates and compile it based on whatever the set list was in that order. Sometimes in that order. And then you have your live album. You kind of mix it all together and remaster it or master it, and then boom, that becomes your live album. Or sometimes in the case of a Jimi Hendrix, or in the case of Prince, where a singular concert from beginning to end is significant, and you put that out as a singular CD or 2 CD set or whatever the length of the concert entails. So this would be one I would guess you would probably just take the best performances from whatever number of significant tour dates and mix them all together and compile them as a single performance. Or if there is one in particular, like I said, this one, there's not a lot of buzz like you do with a lot of legendary artists. Like I said, you do have them with Prince with other eras, like for those of you on Valium, that's significant. The Les New Morning in Paris, that one is significant, to where they fit in that artist's, history or era. It's a significant era of that artist's career. So like I said, I don't think there's one you could pull that would make a singular concert from beginning to end. So I would probably be happy with a compilation of the various dates. So you would have maybe one half of the CD be two, maybe the first half is from, say, Philadelphia. And then the second half of disc two would be from Atlanta. And then the second disc, half of that's Memphis, the other half St. Louis, whatever. And do it that way. And have it as a singular collection. I don't know if there's anything that has been professionally filmed that you can make a DVD out of. I know everything I've seen has been pretty much bootleg quality, meaning that, you have somebody with a video camera, or let's see, I don't think phones had that technology back then, but that smartphone capability like we have now. But somebody with some kind of camcorder or digital camera, at least, it's not the greatest of quality, and it's just that one angle, and it zooms in, zooms out, no two camera professional shooting on that one. But if there is some that exists, I would love to see a DVD on it. Some of you collectors may know more than I do. So if there is a DVD that exists, not officially, but if there's one that exists, let me know, because I would like to see that be an official release. But as far as a single CD or double CD release, I would say, again, take maybe the best performances out of each one and make that your official complete release. Just a single standalone release. Like I said, to me, it's kind of one of my favorite eras, even though I missed witnessing it live myself. But like I said, just that lineup and the energy that they brought as a band with that, let's see, like I said, I remember the things that were sent to me, voicemail, I think was Computer Blues one. I know some heavy, I think maybe, I don't know, Housequake, I don't know, it was something heavy with the sax going on, and it was funky. So definitely, this is something that I would like to see. And like I said, just based on what I've seen on the internet thus far, like I said, an amazing show. Like I said, kind of maybe not a watershed moment in for that era or for that period, but like I said, it was a funky band, and like I said, in the context of time, this probably would have been one of the last times we would have seen him perform the hits. It definitely was for a good long while. So this is definitely one I would like to see the estate release one day. And what's most important is, what do you think? Were you a fan of this era, this band lineup? Like I said, in addition to the musicians, you had Geneva, who was a dancer, and then you had the backing voices, female group called Millennia. They joined the tour in April as background singers, and that continued on through the end of the tour in May of 2001. So, like I said, this was a pretty good lineup. Great presentation of the songs, strong material. But what do you guys think? Was this a favorite era of yours? Is there something else you would like to see featured as a Bite the Boot segment? Definitely hit me up in the comments and let me know. And that's going to end this week's episode of Amari Purple Talk. And again, you can always submit questions or topic ideas. It doesn't matter. You can hit me up on Twitter at Richard_now. A lot of you, when I post the in-show graphics and various other things on the various Prince pages from my fan page or my artist page, feel free to drop a comment or a topic there if you feel comfortable doing it. We'll definitely give you a shout out. I will definitely read your topic or question on the air and address it. And let's see, we also have Amari Purple Talk merchandise. There's t-shirts and there are mugs. You can go to amaricommunications.com, hit up the merchandise page. It will take you to the Cafe Press, which manufactures and distributes all of my merchandise. But you can get Amari Purple Talk merchandise there. Also, there is other Amari related merchandise as well. So definitely take a look at that and, definitely make a purchase. And outside of that, that is going to end our show. Thank you for I can't talk anymore. Thanks to everyone for tuning in this week. Like I said, I kind of pictured this week going a little bit differently in my head, but hey, there are things, there is adversity in life, and we have to do what we can to either overcome adversity or definitely learn to sidestep it as well. So by all means, we're all out here alone, but we're also together. And definitely let's dare to create, and let's keep it purple and on the one. Come to